Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into an absolute masterpiece, Donella Meadows' Thinking in Systems. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this book could completely change the way you see, well, pretty much everything.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to fix a problem only to find you've somehow made it worse? Or, there's that one problem that just keeps coming back no matter what you throw at it. It's like a stubborn weed you just can't get rid of.
Well, according to the brilliant systems scientist Donella Meadows, the reason our fixes fail so often is that we're basically looking at the wrong thing. We get fixated on the events, the stock market crash, the sudden dip in sales, but we completely miss the invisible structures underneath that are actually causing them. Okay, so let's really dive into what that means.
To start seeing the world like a systems thinker, we first need a new set of tools, a new vocabulary, really. It's all about learning how to describe the underlying structure of a system. The parts that are so often hidden in plain sight.
Okay, so let's take something like a football team. The elements are easy to spot, right? The players, the ball, the field. The interconnections are the rules of the game, the coach's strategy. But what's the purpose? Is it just to win? Or is it to entertain? Or maybe to make money for the owners? Meadows argues that this last part, the purpose, the thing that's often least obvious, is actually the most powerful driver of how that entire system behaves.
All right. The next big idea we need to get is stocks and flows. It sounds complicated, but it's not. A stock is just an accumulation of something. Think water in a bathtub or money in your bank account. And the flows, well, that's just the stuff moving in and out. The faucet filling the tub is an inflow, the drain is an outflow. Simple. But here's the kicker. Stocks act as the memory of a system. They create delays, they act as buffers, and that is why the effects of our actions almost never happen immediately.
So, if stocks and flows are the what, how are they controlled? It all comes down to feedback loops. And really, there are only two main types you need to know. First, you've got balancing loops. These guys seek stability. The perfect example is a thermostat in your house. Its whole job is to keep the temperature right where you want it. On the other hand, you have reinforcing loops. These are the engines of exponential change. They create runaway growth or collapse. Think of a snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger, faster and faster. That's a reinforcing loop in action. Okay, so what happens when these simple loops, balancing and reinforcing, start to combine and interact in the real world? Well, that's when you get these recurring problems, these patterns that Meadows calls system traps. And I'm willing to bet you've experienced pretty much all of them, even if you didn't have a name for them at the time.
First up is a classic, the tragedy of the commons. Here's the setup. You have a shared resource, like a public pasture. Each person thinks, hey, if I just add one more cow, what's the harm? The problem is, when everyone thinks that way, the pasture gets overgrazed and the resource collapses for everybody.
And you see this everywhere. Overfishing, traffic jams, pollution. The core problem, from a systems perspective, is a weak or delayed feedback loop. That one fisherman doesn't immediately feel the impact of his one extra catch on the whole ocean. The signal from the resource back to the user is broken, so no one feels the collective damage until it's way, way too late.
All right, trap number 2 is all about those reinforcing loops we talked about. It's called success to the successful, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a powerful feedback loop where the winner of one round gets rewarded with the resources that make it even easier for them to win the next round.
You know the saying, the rich get richer? That's this trap in a nutshell. But it's also a big company using its profits to crush smaller rivals, or a social media algorithm that shows already popular stuff to even more people. The system just keeps feeding the winners, creating this powerful cycle. And over time, this can be really dangerous for a system, because it wipes out diversity and makes the whole thing less resilient. It just leaves you with one huge winner and a bunch of losers who got pushed out of the game entirely.
And our third trap, this one is a doozy. It's called escalation. This is another reinforcing loop, but this time it involves 2 or more competitors locked in a battle to one-up each other. One side makes a move, so the other side has to make a bigger move, which forces the first side to respond with an even bigger move, and on it goes.
Think about price wars between airlines or an arms race between countries. It even happens with kids in a shouting match. Each side is just reacting to the other, trying to stay ahead. The system spirals out of control so fast, and it often ends with both sides completely exhausted. Or worse, it is the definition of a race to the bottom, where there are no real winners.
So, if we're constantly stuck in these traps, what do? How do we get out? This is where Donella Meadows' work goes from just interesting to absolutely game-changing.
She created a hierarchy of what she called leverage points. Basically, places you can poke a system to get the biggest bang for your buck, ranked from least effective to most powerful.
Okay, listen up, because this might be the most important part of this whole explainer. We as a society spend almost all of our time and energy fighting over the absolute least effective leverage point, the numbers, things like taxes, subsidies, budgets. We just tweak the parameters. But according to Meadows, the real power, the places where you can create genuine lasting change, are way higher up this list. We're talking about changing the rules of the game, changing the goals of the system, and, at the very top, changing the entire paradigm, the shared worldview that the system grew out of in the first place.
And that brings us to the very top, the ultimate leverage point, shifting the paradigm itself. This is about changing the core beliefs, the foundational mindset that gives birth to the entire system, its goals, its rules, everything. Just think about this question for a second. What would change if the goal of our economy wasn't just endless growth, but human well-being? See, asking a different question doesn't just get you a different answer. It changes the entire game. And learning how to see, to question, and maybe even to shift these paradigms, well, that's not just an academic exercise. That's the key to finally learning how to dance with systems instead of just being pushed around by them.